Mind telling me your name?
Sure, Ryan York,
How do you spell it? Because
RyanYork.
that is awesome. I know how to spell that now too.
And I do a lot of things related to the anime industry. I own a retail store. I own a convention. We also run game shows for lots of other conventions. So we do a lot of things with the anime industry in general.
Don't be scared by the questions. It's double spaced.
I'm fine.
So, so it's awesome that you sell so much manga because this is gonna be like my favorite shop ever now. Because I've started so many manga at bookstores, and I've either had to leave because I wasn't allowed to buy anything, or they only had the one. So it's
Sure.
just awesome. How popular would you say anime manga is in just the U.S.?
Anime, it's a difficult question. Anime is very popular. It's certainly been gaining popularity in the last couple of years. It's hard to measure its popularity because of the tendency for people to pirate things. So you can't really measure it by sales anymore because more people pirate it than actually buy it now, which is
Watch
pretty
it on
horrible. Pardon?
Watch it on YouTube.
Sure, or watching on YouTube, which is basically the same thing because they don't have rights to put it up. But then there are also legitimate ways to watch it online, so you can watch it on Crunchyroll, which is fine, and that would be pretty hard to actually track. But supposedly, just based on sales alone, its popularity has gone up throughout the last couple of years, despite the trouble the industry has had. I mean, a couple of companies have gone out of business just this year alone. So.
And manga, it's even harder to say because kids tend to pass it around.
Yep. Also, with manga, you get the scanlations. So a lot of people are pirating by just downloading scanned versions of it that have been translated from Japan, instead of actually actually even they call them scanlations, but sometimes they're just scans of the actual English version too. Usually you get a translation that's a scan because it happens to come out that way first. But yeah, that is a huge thing. But no, manga is also very popular. I haven't recently looked at numbers, but it's pretty comparable to U.S. comics actually. So.
That is awesome because I heard kind of a scary rumor, well, to me, anyways, that it's getting harder and harder to publish manga in the U.S. because publishers are going out of business.
It is definitely, yep, because of all the pirating, it is definitely getting harder and harder. Tokyo Pop went out of business, I think, last year, and they were one of the biggest manga distributors.
Gosh, that's
I know
scary 'cause,
about
in the
half of our wall is basically out of print now because of that.
in my middle school library, they had like a small section dedicated to anime, manga, comic books.
Yep.
Just a small section, and like over half of it was Tokyo Pop, and the other half was Viz Media.
Yep.
And now Tokyo Pop's out of business. I have no idea what they're doing with the books. So, what would, in your opinion, what would you say attracts people to manga the most? Like,
Well, it used to be the cultural thing of being able to, being able to learn a little bit about Japanese culture and the real differences between their take on media and how stories are told and what audiences they target. Nowadays, I don't think it's quite that as much. It's usually just that there's a large amount of it out there, and it's for a younger audience. It has it's lots of genres, but they tend to target teenage boys and girls very well, and have stuff that you can't find necessarily in American media that really targets that as well. I mean, if you look at American comics, a lot of them aren't really targeting teens. A lot of them are very much targeting adults right now. I mean, there are exceptions, but for the bulk of what's being published, a lot of it really isn't targeting teens. And manga does a great job of targeting all audiences because it's like the art form is considered so mainstream over there that you can publish something for adults or kids or anything, and everyone has no problem with that, and it all sells well. So they do.
Well, manga, I always think of it as kind of like a movie that you hold in your hands.
Sure.
It's like, because the way your eyes move across the paper, it just seems like it's a movie instead of a book, and it's really cool. I always thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, there's some real correlations to be made in comics and manga in general, with comparing that to the actual scripting processes for when they actually go to make movies. Like the cells are very similar to the way people script a movie ahead of time. I can't remember the word for that, but
Well, it's also really easy to turn a manga into an anime because the
Sure.
pages are just laid out just like a
yep,
script.
just like a
script versions.
storyboard for a movie.
Just
Yep,
like a storyboard, yeah.
yep. That's the word for it.
This is gonna sound like really formal, but it's kind of like gonna have writer's block. But what's the business like for just all the merchandise?
Well, it's certainly interesting. For anime, we actually sell a lot more manga than we do actual anime now. Mostly because a lot of it is mainstream, and the markup on DVDs is so small that as a small business, it's really not worth doing it. We only concentrate in full series because it's a better per purchase to get a full series than individuals, which is what the larger box stores do, like Best Buy or one of them.
Yeah,
They concentrate on the single
Four
series.
episodes per CD.
Yeah,
Or
and that's
they get, like,
really
40
bad.
CDs.
Yep.
Especially for Naruto and Bleach, where they have like
Yep.
386 episodes and just non-stop.
And anime is well known for really long series. I mean, the industry here, and I don't know that it's true of everywhere in the U.S., but at least in Maine, we have a hard time selling a lot of the merchandise. I try to do that only by special order. There's lots of things I can carry that I can't afford to keep in store because it doesn't sell particularly well because there's always new shows coming out. And manga is our best seller mostly because there's just not a lot of people nearby that keep as many titles in stock as we do. So I mean, we keep small numbers of issues. Like we may have only one of each issue, but we have way more titles. If you go to a bigger box store, they usually have 5 of the most popular 10 series. And so it looks like they have a big shelf, but in actuality they have...
Copies of the same.
Yep, it's just multiples of the same thing so that it looks like there's a lot of stuff on the shelf. And we can keep track of our inventory enough to just keep reordering stuff when it sells, and it's not a big deal. And there's just so many titles that aren't as mainstream, so we have kind of a niche market there because we carry so many different titles. It is a very hard business to be in. The amount of money you make is probably not maintainable if that's all you do, so we do a lot of other things as well. We carry gaming stuff, which sells very well, board games and card games and role-playing games, and so that, because that's a much easier seller, is kind of nice, and our walls can be filled with manga, and at the same time it doesn't matter if we don't sell a lot of it all at once because it's a slow burn. It will all eventually sell. It's just not as reliable, but I mean, it means we don't have to order stuff as quickly. For the gaming stuff, I order new stuff every week. For manga, I get just the new titles in. I don't have to restock stuff particularly often.
I walked in and it's like the first thing that I saw
Yeah.
was the wall, and I just automatically just...
Walls and walls of books. It looks great. I love it. I wish there were more titles still out there. We used to actually have a lot more titles. If you look at the shelves now, they're actually pretty sparse. There's spots where we have them faced out. It used to be all just titles. And there's so many less titles coming out because of the publishing being much harder nowadays.
I want to go to Japan and learn how to read Japanese just so I can go to a convenience store, or they have vending machines where you
Yep.
can get manga, and just choose one and just read it. And it's so cheap there, you can buy one every day and just throw the one you had away.
Yep.
It's awesome.
Actually, in Japan, they have an amazing used book section. They do really good with used titles. So you can buy your book and then sell it back to them and get a new one. And the markup between differences is very minuscule compared to what it is over here. So, like, it's really cool the way they do it. I wish the American industry would support it as well as it does over there, because their used industries is amazing for books. I mean, they sell the same book 20 times.
Unlike our library, because with the Hunger Games, like, it was like really big last year. I was working in the library one day, and we had a 20-person waiting list for 4 books, and we had to like destroy 3 books at the end of it, because you can't just throw the book away because people can still pick it up and read it. You have to like literally destroy the book, and it's like it's heartbreaking because you're destroying a book.
Yep.
But you have to do it. It's protocol. But,
Yep.
and I don't understand that. But
It's because the library got it at a discount for being a library, so they need to make sure that it doesn't go to someone else used.
yeah.
I understand that because I buy used books, and I have to check to make sure they're not library books that someone stole or something like that.
What kind of customers you get? Is like mostly boys, girls?
It's
Even
everything.
split?
I get all ages, all genders. I have to admit that we have less older people than we used to. The anime side of things has gotten less popular with the older crowd lately, just because it's become so much more popular with a younger crowd. So it's most older people tend to just order stuff online rather than come in on person because I don't know if it embarrasses them or not. But we used to have a much older audience, and just not so much anymore. I mean, I've been in business for 10 years, so that's not odd for things to change in that amount of time.
I'm actually doing a section or two about like just boys versus girls immersion, just to
Sure.
manga. What would you say like the most popular manga would be for girls? Or just
It would be really hard to say specifically what the most popular one would be, especially because you could. I mean, there are titles that are specifically targeting girls, but that doesn't mean that's necessarily what girls want to read. Are you talking teenage girls?
well, just girls like the genres like fantasy, magic, just sparkles and big eyes. And
I would have to really generalize, and I can. If I'm going to overly generalize, I would say it's probably romance. But that's a big generalization. There are a lot of girls that are heavily into all sorts of genres. I mean,
the first anime and manga that I got into was Naruto, and then,
Yep.
and then I got into Bleach, and then I started getting into the girl stuff.
yep. Younger girls actually tend right now to be into everything. They honestly don't even care. They just want to read, whatever the newest anime is. Just, I don't know, it's popular enough that genre isn't a limiting factor for a lot of them. So, I would say that 80% of girls that come in read romance, but that's a generalization. I don't know that I haven't done any actual research to prove that.
And I would guess that boys just like the really action-y kind of sportsy kind of.
A lot of them do. I mean, again, it's a generalization. I have boys who come in and that's all they read is romance. So, and I have girls that come in and all they read is horror. I mean, but yeah, in general, most guys read what you call shonen, which is like the fighter style anime. Yeah, fantasy, adventure, sci-fi, that sort of stuff.
I read an article over the internet, and I'm not sure if it's completely reliable, but it said that the general stereotype for a person who reads manga is kind of a short, dark, emo, glasses-wearing nerd who's a college-age male, and I'm like,
Oh, you didn't raise.
Certainly a stereotype. I don't know that I would say that that's
Stereotype.
everyone's stereotype.
I know, because there's a bunch of different people
Yeah.
who like manga.
I think that might be a stereotype that younger kids that haven't had a lot of exposure to anime might have. If you go to an anime convention, that is not generally the
All
case.
types.
Yep, there certainly are people of that description that are into anime, but I wouldn't
like-
I wouldn't say it's the majority.
It's
Actually,
certainly not the majority. It's just equal to
And then do more stuff.
girls with sparkly eyes who do the eye makeup, like their eyebrows are way up here, and they're not.
First game I played.
There's not many of those girls that are the emo kids.
No,
so.
once you choose to attack, that's all you do.
That's actually all the questions I have.
Okay.
Basically,
thank you.
Thank you. It was wonderful meeting with you.
Nice to meet you.